It was a quiet evening when Melissa decided to drive from Flagstaff to Sedona, Arizona. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, and the desert air was cooling, a perfect time for a long drive. But what was supposed to be a peaceful, scenic ride took a terrifying turn when she, unknowingly, followed the wrong GPS route. Melissa wasn't unfamiliar with Arizona's back roads. She had driven here before, visiting friends and family, and she loved the freedom of the open road. The desert landscape stretching endlessly around her had always been peaceful, but tonight, things felt different. As she approached the outskirts of Flagstaff, her GPS instructed her to take a detour. "Recalculating route," the soft voice of her navigation system chirped as it redirected her off the main highway and onto a narrow, winding dirt road that cut through the woods. It seemed odd to her at first. She wasn't expecting this kind of route, but she shrugged it off. After all, GPS systems were constantly rerouting drivers for various reasons. Construction, accidents, or maybe just the traffic of a holiday weekend. It wasn't a big deal, right? She pressed on, the gravel crunching beneath her tires as she picked up speed down the dirt road. The trees closed in around her, their thick trunks casting long, eerie shadows in the dimming light. Her headlights sliced through the dark, illuminating the winding path ahead. But there was something unsettling about how isolated this road seemed. She hadn't seen another car in what felt like forever, and the wilderness had an almost suffocating quiet about it. But still, she kept driving, thinking it was just a small detour that would eventually loop back onto the main road. Minutes passed, and as the road became more rugged, her phone began to lose signal. The usual bars of reception flickered and disappeared. Melissa tried not to worry, but a strange sense of unease was creeping in. Still, she convinced herself that it was just a temporary glitch. After all, she wasn't in the most populated area, and losing signal wasn't uncommon out here. Then, something happened that made her heart skip a beat. In the distance, through the rearview mirror, she noticed headlights, faint at first, but slowly growing brighter. A car was following her. She frowned, thinking it might just be another traveler trying to catch up with her. But the longer she looked, the more she realized how strange it was. The car wasn't closing the distance between them. In fact, it was staying back just enough that she couldn't see who was driving it. The headlights stayed level with hers, never getting any closer, but never fading away. Melissa's instincts kicked in, and her stomach churned with unease. She had heard about people being followed in remote areas like this, but she didn't want to jump to conclusions. She tried to ignore it at first. Maybe it was just another driver who had taken the same detour. But after a few more miles, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so she did what anyone would do. She sped up. The moment she hit the gas, the car behind her accelerated too. It wasn't just matching her speed, it was keeping perfect pace with her. A chill ran down her spine as she took another glance in the mirror, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver. But there was no one to see. The headlights were too blinding to make out any details in the car. In a panic, she took a sharp left turn, hoping to lose the car in the winding road. But to her horror, the car followed suit, turning at the same precise moment. Now her heart was racing, and her palms were sweating as she desperately tried to think of what to do. She had to get away. This was no coincidence. She glanced around, hoping to see any sign of civilization, but all she could see were endless trees and darkness. Her phone was still dead, and the isolation of the woods seemed to grow more oppressive with every passing second. She had no idea where she was, or how to get out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spotted a clearing up ahead. It wasn't much, a small patch of open ground, but it was enough for her to pull off the road and stop, hoping the other car would pass by. But the car didn't pass. Instead, it stopped too. The two vehicles sat there in the dark, motionless for a few long seconds. The headlights from the car behind her washed over her rearview mirror, blinding her and casting shadows that danced unnaturally on the trees. She stared, frozen in place, but the car didn't move. It just sat there. Her hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Her mind raced. What were the odds that this was all just some bizarre coincidence? She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. And then, with a slow, deliberate motion, the car began to back away. It didn't drive away like she had hoped. No, it backed up slowly, its reverse lights flickering in the dark as it retreated back into the trees. Melissa watched, heart in her throat, as the car disappeared from sight, swallowed by the wilderness. She sat there, frozen, her hands still trembling on the wheel. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. It took her a few moments to gather the strength to start the engine and drive away. But when she did, she didn't stop until she reached a gas station miles down the road. The next morning, shaken and exhausted, Melissa decided to report what had happened to the police. They took her story seriously and sent a team to investigate the area. When they returned, they confirmed something that made her blood run cold. Tire tracks matching her description were found in the clearing where she had stopped. But when they checked the area again, there were no records of any vehicle being there. Not a single trace of another car. It didn't make any sense. How could the tire tracks be there if no car had been? No other vehicle, no sign of the mysterious driver, not even a hint of what she had seen the night before. Melissa tried to put the experience behind her, but the eerie memory haunted her every time she passed through northern Arizona. Was it just a glitch in the GPS? Or was something darker, something more sinister out there in the woods? Some roads lead nowhere, but if you want more true horror, follow this channel. It was well past midnight when I finally stumbled out of the bar. My friends had already left, and I was dragging my feet after a long night of drinks, laughter, and a bit too much talk. It was one of those nights where you don't want it to end, but your body knows better. My head was a little fuzzy, and the night air hit me like a cold slap. All I wanted to do was get in my car, drive home, and crash into bed. I lived in a small suburban neighborhood, a 20-minute drive from the bustling city. It was the perfect place to escape after a hectic week. Quiet streets, tree-lined roads, the occasional barking dog, and no constant honking or noise. It was peaceful and isolated, a stark contrast to the chaos of the bar scene I had just left behind. The road to my house was familiar, winding through sleepy neighborhoods, the occasional stretch of dark woods, and nothing out of the ordinary. At least, that's what I thought. I fired up my car and slowly pulled away from the curb, heading toward the highway. The headlights of my sedan cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty streets as I drove. My eyes darted between the road ahead and the rearview mirror, absent-mindedly glancing at the reflection of the faint streetlights. Everything seemed normal, until I noticed something unusual. It was subtle at first, almost easy to miss. In the corner of my mirror, I saw headlights. A car was behind me. No big deal, right? It was late, maybe someone else heading home. But as I checked again, something felt off. The car wasn't speeding up to pass me, and it wasn't pulling back either. It was just there, a few car lengths behind me, trailing me as I drove. I adjusted my mirror, thinking maybe it was just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. The road was quiet, no other cars in sight. I decided to shrug it off. Maybe it was a driver coming from a nearby neighborhood. After all, the highway was the main route out of the city. I merged onto the main road, and the headlights remained in my mirror. Still, I told myself it was nothing to worry about, but the longer I drove, the more I couldn't shake the odd feeling. The car hadn't changed lanes. It stayed behind me, following my every move. I accelerated slightly, just to see if the car would pass, but it didn't. It kept its distance, matching my speed. I slowed down, and the car did the same. I sped up again, my anxiety starting to rise, and once more the car stayed with me. Not getting any closer, but not falling behind either. It was too precise, too calculated. I turned the radio down, trying to focus, trying to figure out why I was suddenly so on edge. But the car's headlights remained, glowing like a pair of predatory eyes watching from the shadows. My palms started to sweat. I glanced over my shoulder, but the darkened windows of the car behind made it impossible to see who was inside. Was it someone I knew? Was it someone who had just coincidentally taken the same route? After a few minutes, I decided to take a right exit toward my neighborhood, hoping to lose the car. The road to my house was long and winding, and I thought maybe I could shake it off. I turned, and the headlights did the same, following me exactly as though the driver was mimicking my every move. I made another sharp left onto a side street, this time with the hope that I might lose them for good. But the car stayed right there, still behind me. I made a series of turns, left, right, left again, deliberately trying to lose the car. The more turns I made, the faster my heart started pounding in my chest. Every time I checked my mirror, the headlights were still there. Close, but not too close, just hovering behind me. It was like the driver knew exactly what I was doing, knew exactly what turn I was going to make next. My paranoia kicked in. Was this someone following me intentionally? Or was I just overthinking things? The feeling of isolation grew stronger. There was no other traffic, no other cars around. The road was empty, the streetlights few and far between. My headlights illuminated the road ahead, but the rest of the world was swallowed in darkness. The only other light came from the car behind me. My grip on the steering wheel tightened, knuckles turning white. I didn't know how much longer I could take this. I tried to focus, to calm myself down, but the faster I drove, the more intense my panic became. I could feel the sweat collecting on my brow as I glanced in the rearview mirror again. The car hadn't gone anywhere. It was still there, as though it had been attached to my bumper the entire time. Eventually, I pulled onto a small, dead-end street. There was nowhere else to go. No escape, no other options. I had to stop and see if the car would go past me. I pulled over to the side of the street, the headlights of my own car shining into the dark trees that lined the end of the road. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe they were just heading in the same direction. But as I looked into the rearview mirror, I realized something unsettling. The car had stopped too. It was still behind me, headlights glaring, not moving. My heart raced, and for the first time that night, a cold sweat broke out across my back. The silence outside was suffocating. No sound, no other cars, just the distant rustle of trees. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. This wasn't right. It wasn't normal. I sat there frozen, staring at the headlights. I had no idea what to do. My eyes darted between the mirror and the road ahead. Every second felt like an eternity. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady my hands. I knew I couldn't just sit there forever. I threw my car into reverse, hoping that if I backed up, the car would move out of the way. But as soon as I started to move, the other car did the same. It mirrored my every movement, inch by inch. It wasn't just following me, it was copying me. The terror that washed over me was unlike anything I had ever felt before. I slammed my foot on the gas, speeding forward, hoping to outrun whatever was behind me. I turned back onto the main road, my heart thundering in my chest. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. No car. It was gone. I drove straight to my house, barely able to breathe as I pulled into my driveway. My hands were shaking as I turned off the engine, but I was finally home. Safe, or so I thought. The next morning, I decided to drive back down the same road, hoping that maybe I was just imagining things. But as I passed the dead-end street, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Tire marks. The same marks I had left the night before. But there was no sign of the car. No other tire tracks. Just the marks I had made, leading into the darkness of the woods. There were no other signs of any vehicle ever being there. I called the police, but they found nothing. No sign of the car, no security footage, and no record of anyone on that road the previous night. It was as if it had never happened at all. I still don't know who was behind that wheel or why they followed me that night. But I can tell you this, I have never driven that route again. I've driven through that area in the daylight, and it's always quiet, peaceful. But every time I pass that street, I can't help but feel like someone's watching me. Some roads lead nowhere, but others, they might just lead you into something you'll never be able to explain. And I'm not sure I want to find out what that something was. I used to love driving late at night. There's something peaceful about it. The world quiet, the streets empty, the hum of your car the only sound. You feel like the world belongs to you alone. But that was before the night I realized that sometimes quiet isn't peace. I had just left my friend's house around midnight. The party had been small, the kind where everyone is relaxed, a little tired, just laughing and sharing stories. I wasn't drunk, just sleepy and eager to get home. The roads were nearly empty, the kind of night where headlights stretch long across the asphalt and the only sound is your engine. The highway I took cuts through the outskirts of my town. Endless stretches of asphalt flanked by thick trees, farmland, and the occasional abandoned building. I've driven this road hundreds of times, never thinking twice. About 20 minutes in, I noticed a car in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought nothing of it. People drive at night. It's normal to see someone behind you. But then I started noticing things. The car was too close. It was a black sedan, its headlights on, high beams off, keeping pace exactly with me. Every curve, every gentle swerve, the car stayed perfectly behind me. My stomach dropped. I tried to ignore it. I tried telling myself it was coincidence, just someone going the same way. But the more I glanced in the mirror, the more I realized that this wasn't normal. There was something deliberate about the way they were following. Every time I slowed down, they slowed down. Every time I sped up, they sped up. I took the next exit, weaving through smaller streets, hoping to lose them in the maze of side roads. I even made a random turn onto a street I hadn't been down in years. But every turn I made, every light I passed, the sedan was there, always behind me, always matching my speed. My hands started to shake. I called my friend. I had to tell someone, even if it sounded ridiculous. "Hey, just leaving, driving home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, I'll be there soon." I didn't tell them about the car. I didn't want to seem crazy. I didn't want to believe it myself. I tried a different tactic. I drove slowly, even stopped at a red light. The sedan stopped behind me, perfectly aligned, engine silent but lights glaring. I sped up. They sped up. I swerved slightly, so did they. It was like playing a terrifying game of mirror driving. I could feel their presence. My imagination tried to convince me that it wasn't real, but every instinct screamed that it was. The road eventually led me to a small commercial area, gas stations, empty shops, a few streetlights casting weak glows. I pulled into the nearest gas station, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The sedan didn't slow. It didn't pull into the lot. It stayed at the edge, just watching. I could feel it in the air, like someone breathing just outside your door when you're alone at home. I pulled into the nearest gas station, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The sedan didn't slow. It didn't pull into the lot. It stayed at the edge, just watching. I could feel it in the air, like someone breathing just outside your door when you're alone at home. I sat there, heart hammering, willing myself to breathe normally. I debated leaving, circling back to the highway, driving until I couldn't see headlights behind me, but every instinct screamed that if I moved, they would move too. Slowly the sedan backed away, just enough to disappear behind the pumps, but it didn't leave. It was waiting, watching. I could feel its presence like a shadow stretching across the lot. Eventually, I forced myself to start driving again, taking the smallest, quietest streets I knew, weaving through side roads, praying to lose the car. Every glance in the rearview mirror made my stomach twist. There it was, just beyond the tail of the streetlights, as if it had been there the entire time, following me with a patience that chilled me to my bones. When I finally reached home, I locked the doors, double-checked every window, and drew the blinds. Every flicker of light outside sent my heart racing. I tried to sleep, but the image of those headlights lingered, drifting across the dark of my room every time I closed my eyes. Weeks passed, and though the nights were quiet, I never dared take that highway alone again. Sometimes, while driving elsewhere at night, I'd catch the faintest reflection of headlights in my mirrors, far behind me, perfectly aligned. I'd grip the wheel, pulse racing, unable to shake the feeling that it was waiting. Always patient, always deliberate. Months later, I told a friend the story. They laughed, dismissing it as imagination. "Black cars on empty streets? You're fine," they said. But I know the truth. Some cars don't just follow. Some cars watch, and some never let go.